All right, my friends, we are diving into a doozy of a topic today, and that is screens in the educational setting. So, I am your host, Carrie Clark, speech language pathologist, and today I'm going to be diving deep into the research on what we know about screen time in the schools and what it means for education, but specifically what it means for speech language therapy and speech language pathologists, as that is my area. So, as you probably know, if you have listened to this podcast before, I love digging through the research and figuring out how do we make all the things that are coming through in research practical and how do we translate that to our real world practice. So this started because my friend who's a teacher was talking about this study she had heard that it was a new study. I think it just came out last fall or maybe even this winter, saying that higher total screen time was associated with lower reading and math achievement on standardized tests. So this was a study out of Canada by Lee et al., and it's called Screen Time and Standardized Academic Achievement Tests in Elementary School. So the implication here being, are we doing our students a disservice by having screens in the schools if it is actually not helping them learn? So this is what set me off onto my whole journey of this. And boy, did I go deep. So I'm going to share so much with you today. So my question here, right? I said, okay, so higher total screen time was associated with these lower scores. But surely we're just talking about like YouTube and video games, right? Educational screen time is different, right? I took my 12-year-old to the doctor for his checkup was it yesterday or the day before? And on the form from the American Association of Pediatricians, it says, how much screen time does your child get per day, not counting educational screen time or school-based screen time? Okay, so it even specifies there. That's what I've been hearing for years is, oh, well, like free time on the screens is different than educational screen time. All right, so that's where I went next, started digging. Well, a 2020 study from California by Yangus found that their one laptop per child program did not improve educational outcomes. So they made sure every child had their own laptop. They watched the scores. They did the study. No improvement. Okay. And then we've got a global report by the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. This report says that if you look at the best performing education systems in the world, the whole world, such as those in East Asia, they've been very cautious about using technology in their classrooms. And based on their data, this organization's data, those students who use tablets or computers very often tend to do worse than those who use them moderately. Okay, so that's not great, right? But I kept digging and I found a 2023 study from Selmaron et al. Found that even small daily amounts, and we're talking 30 minutes a day of digital use in the classroom, was negatively related to reading comprehension scores. 30 minutes a day, guys. I don't know if you've been in a classroom lately, but they are on their screens all day long. There's so much education that happens on our screens. Our textbooks are on screens. Our practice activities are on screens. In our school district, the district-wide assessments, the statewide assessments, all the assessments are on there. They have programs they do daily for practice. Their free time is on there. Their indoor recess is on there. Everything happens on these screens, right? Okay, but why? So now I'm saying, okay, this is not just one study that's showing that test scores are poorer because of this. So I wanted to know why. So I started digging into what is happening to cause these numbers, or what do we think might be happening to cause these numbers? All right. So here's a study out of Norway. Mangan et al. Found that students who read texts in print score significantly better on reading comprehension tests than those who read the text digitally. All right. So just reading the same words on a piece of paper led to better reading comprehension than reading it on a screen. That is wild to me. And so now we have a 2023. You'll notice these years are really recent, guys. These are recent studies coming out. 2023 study by MIT, they actually used MRI scans, okay? And they found that adolescents showed stronger reading circuits in those who spent more time reading paper books than those who spent the same amount of time on screens or some amount of time on screens. I'm not sure what the exact equivalent was, but actual MRI scans. Our physical brains are different from reading on paper versus reading on screens. Wild to me, you guys. Also, I don't know if the rest of you are as scared or outraged about this as I am, but I have children in the public education system right now, and I feel scared by this data that we are doing these children a disservice by not providing them with paper. Okay, it keeps going though. We're going to keep going. 2024 study from Columbia University measured brain activations. Okay, so they're also doing scans, found that after reading a text in print, children were more able to make connections with new concepts, and the meaning networks built during print reading were richer and deeper than those established during digital reading. How many of our language clients do we struggle with reading comprehension because they can't read something new and associate it, connect it with what they already know? How many know what there's a table, right, that teachers do where it's like, what do I know? What do I learn? What do I have questions on? I don't remember what it is. But like, how many of those do we do, right? Because these children are having so much trouble connecting what they're learning with what they already know or making connections with new concepts. And just simply reading something on paper was enough to help them build better connections. That's huge, guys. So I hope you're starting to see, we're going to take this to how does this apply to speech therapy? But I hope you're starting to see there's some really great evidence here saying that maybe if we just use paper, we could see some improvements in some of these areas, right? Okay, but we're going to keep going. It's not just reading. Writing also, like the act of handwriting with a implement on paper. A 2005 study by Longcamp et al. Found that writing letters led to better letter learning and letter recognition. So this was in little kids learning how to form letters, actually forming them with a pen and paper, pencil and paper, was better than practicing them on a screen or learning about them on a screen or playing a game with them on a screen, right? Actually writing them. A 2021 study by Ihara et al. Found that writing by hand improved memorization of words. And turns out, not just children, there have also been studies on specifically these two that I'm going to share are undergraduate students, so college level. But I would say this translates to adults too. But we have a 2014 study by Mueller et al. That found that taking notes by hand led to better retention than typing them. So like if they're taking notes in class. And then a 2016 study by Singer et al. Found that undergraduate students recalled key points linked to main idea and other relevant information better when engaging with print versus screens. It's a lot, you guys. And this was just some of it, right? I'm sure if I kept digging, I would find more studies. These were the ones that were easy for me to find right off the bat. So what does this mean for speech therapy? What does this mean for our students who come to us because they are struggling in their classrooms, they're struggling in their communication skills? Well, unfortunately for them, according to the U.S. Department of Education, our lowest performing students in schools have shown the sharpest decline in academics, even from before the pandemic. So this introduction of when technology started being introduced in the schools, when everybody started getting their laptops and their tablets and everything started going digital, overall, we've seen a decline. So if you look at from the U.S. Department of Education, if you look at the stats in terms of like reading levels and math levels and all of our scores, we're on a steady decline, okay? So I think I saw the 2022 data was actually worse in reading. The scores were worse in reading than when we took the very first year they started collecting data, which was in 1971. That's real bad, guys. It's real bad. And obviously the pandemic had something to do with that. But even before the pandemic, we were seeing this decline from this technology being introduced into schools. And the discrepancy is so big for our lowest performing students. So those kids that are struggling in whatever way, the achievement gap has gotten bigger. So yes, scores are on a decline overall, but our scores for our lowest students are declining faster. The achievement gap is increasing in light of all these new technologies. And can we say for sure it is the technology that is causing this achievement gap? No, we cannot. Okay, this is speculation at this point. I shared a lot of data with you already. So based on that data, it definitely looks like the screen-based learning could be playing into this. Now, obviously, like I said, pandemic plays into this. The stressors and problems in our society play into this. There's so many things that play into this. There's no way to tease it out. But it definitely is something to pay attention to. There's a lot of data pointing to, hey guys, maybe this isn't going great for us. I didn't grab the year or the person, but I saw a study out of Sweden saying that Sweden was one of the first countries to start implementing technology into their schools and going digital and doing all of this stuff. One of the very first schools, school systems, areas, countries to do this. They are currently spending millions of dollars. I know it's not dollars, but their currency to put textbooks back in their schools because their data is not showing that this is working. Okay, so they were the pioneers, and now they're pioneering going back to paper because the data's not looking good. All right. Now, obviously, this is something that we need more research for specifically in our field. I did find one very small study of just 22 kids that were doing phonological therapy. Okay, so we're talking about sounds on a tablet, and that was just as effective as regular, but I couldn't find anything on language therapy, social skill therapy, fluency, any of the other ones. I didn't find any studies. And so obviously this is something we need to do more research on. But now we understand a very huge piece of this puzzle. Okay. If we have a student who comes to us because they are struggling in the classroom, it's very possible that simply giving them activities on paper instead of a screen could give them a huge leg up. If they are the kind of kid that's just not learning well from screens and you give them the same type of instruction on paper, what if that was enough? And yeah, if they're coming to us, they probably have more issues than just not learning well on screens, right? But by using that, by switching to a paper activity, by avoiding screens when we can in our sessions, we may be able to maximize that progress and help that student make even faster progress with our specially designed instruction, right? That alone might boost their reading comprehension. It might boost their comprehension of the lessons that we're trying to teach them, right? So obviously more research is needed, but this is something very simple and a very easy way for you in your very own speech room to do your own little research study. Just try your activities on paper and see if your clients respond better. Okay, this is something that you don't need to wait for our field to catch up and get the research done because a lot of these studies take years to develop, right? So yes, I hope we will be seeing more of this coming out, but there's enough evidence right now saying that this may be a really big deal and probably is a really big deal. And I am yet to see any studies that say, no, actually, students do way better if we give them these things on screens than on paper. So there's not a lot of downside either to saying, well, we're going to just, my speech room is going to be paper. We're going to do our activities on paper. So now I'm not saying you should go out and, spend all your time taking all your digital materials and creating paper versions, et cetera, et cetera. Obviously, there's stuff out there. We have our PDFs are all printable. So all of our goal packets are paper. And what I've been doing with especially my language kiddos, is I will print out the packet of whatever goal they're working on. So whether it's, sequencing and retelling or telling narratives, asking and answering questions, whatever the goal is, I just print the whole packet, I staple it together, and I drop it in their folder. And so every day they come into speech, they get out their folder, and they work on the page that's on top. Once they have completed the page that's on top, and so sometimes that means just filling it out if it's a worksheet. Sometimes it means practicing it a couple of times until they've got it mastered. So we might use that same page for multiple sessions. But then once they have that done, I tear off that top page. I send that home as homework. I might, take my red pen and just jot at the top, practice this at home. And then we work on the next page. So every day they're just coming in, working on whatever's on top of their packet. Once that's done, they tear it off, they put it in their folder. And I have seen this work really, really well for my clients. It's way easier for them to conceptualize what we're doing. Oh, I'm just working on this packet. I'm working on the first page. And I now have my students during their sessions, are we done with this one? And I'll say, yeah, we're done with that page. And they like to tear it off. They're ready. Okay, I did it. Right. And so it's physical, it's tangible, it makes sense. I think it helps. Again, I haven't done my own studies, so it's hard to say for sure that the paper aspect of it is working. But it's also a lot easier on me because I'm not juggling multiple screens. I'm not trying to pull up different things on the screen, find the different games. I'm not having to lock them in with guided access because they're trying to do other things on the screens. I see better focus when they're sitting down with a paper packet. It just makes more sense to me. So this is something, if you're interested, then you can absolutely see if your clients improve simply by providing those lessons on paper instead of screens. And if you would like some paper packets that are already made and super easy, please join us inside our SLK curriculum. Like I said, we've covered all areas of speech and language and communication, and we have goal packets for each and every one that are already put together. All you have to do is print them. You can use your school printer so you can not have to pay for that yourself, and then chuck those into a folder for each client. I just have a big hanging folder box at the front of the room. All of the students have a hanging folder and we drop it in. Okay. Super easy. All right. You can find that at hub.speechandlanguagekids.com, HUB. And if you have any questions, let me know. But I will see you on the next episode of the Speech and Language Kids podcast. Bye for now.